What we're going to do here is use an Excel workbook to demonstrate the process of sampling. What I've done is I have a worksheet here and I have already entered a formula that you can see displayed in this little window here. The formula and the way it operates is described in the text. Essentially, it uses the rand function to generate a random number. It multiplies this by 100. So instead of the number running from 0 to 1, it now runs from 0 to 100. It will be a decimal, and we don't want to complicate matters by having very large numbers. So I'm using the int function, which terminates decimals and leaves you with a whole number. It's not a rounding function, it is a terminating function. And so we will be generating numbers that range from 0 to 99. I've only got one of them at the moment, and currently it's displaying 81. So if I go to this cell and I copy it, and I'm going to make copies into 30 cells, so 3 columns and 10 rows, and I will now paste. What we've got here is what we can describe as a sample, and it is a sample taken from a rectangular distribution in which every number between 0 and 99 has an equal chance of being chosen. As you can see, we've got some small numbers and some big numbers, and the spread should be even across here. This is not a normal distribution in which the choices of numbers are going to cluster around a particular favourite value. This is a rectangular distribution. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to use another function to calculate the mean of this group of 30 numbers. So that is the equals average. So I'm going to pick the average function, and I want to average these numbers here. So I block them in. You can see Excel very helpfully is building the function for me, and I will enter it. Again, we're going to get a whole load of decimals here. This time I will use a cell format. So we will choose a number for the format, and I'm going to cut this down to 0 decimal places. This cell will still contain the actual decimal number, but it's only displaying the rounded version. So what I've got here is every time I want to generate a new sample, all I need to do is make a change to the spreadsheet. Over to the right here, I've narrowed down some cells and blocked out 5 columns and 10 rows. So that's 100 cells here. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to manually transfer the calculated sample means into this block here until we have 100 of them. So the first one is 46. Recall what this number is. We have here in this block of cells numbers sampled from our rectangular distribution. This number here is the mean of these. So the first one that we've generated is 46. So I'm going to manually type that in here. And when I press enter, I trigger the spreadsheet to actually generate a completely new sample. So it's like we've asked another 30 people to think of their number. And we've got a new mean of 49, so I'm going to manually put that here. The act of pressing enter generates a third sample, and the mean of that is 47. And so on and so forth. Every time I enter a number over here, I'm going to generate a new sample. Now it's going to take a bit of time to do 100 of these, and I'm not going to force you to watch me do all of this. So I will pause the video now, and we will complete the sampling process until I have a sample of 100 means in this area over here. I've now completed all of my 100 samples, and all the 100 values of X bar are recorded in this green box here. So there's 5 columns and 20 rows. To help things along, I have also copied the data into a single column that goes all the way down to column number 101 now. I find that Excel actually works a little bit better if you have your data in a single column rather than in a block. Various versions of Excel differ in how the rest of this is going to be done. I can only demonstrate what my version will do. The first thing to observe is that even though our numbers were sampled in the range 0 to 99, you can see quite clearly without doing any calculations at all that they're clustered around 50-ish. There are no 2s here, for example. And if you think about it, that would be actually very unlikely, that you've got a mean of 2. And that's what doesn't happen. What does happen is you get the sample means clustering around a particular value. If you want to know what that particular value is, you've just got to calculate the mean of these numbers, the mean of the means, if you like. So I will just do that here. Again, I'll use the average function and Excel will help me build the function. And there we go. And there you see, the average is pretty close to the middle of the group of numbers that we were picking from. Right, the next thing is, what actually does this distribution look like if we drew, for example, a frequency polygon of it? Now you can go through this and make a tally chart if you like, but Excel will do this for us. So I'm going to use the capabilities of Excel and demonstrate this to you. Now, your version may well be different from mine. I can only show you what mine will do. Mine does this by what's known as a pivot table. So I am in the data module here, and I'm going to choose pivot table, and I want to choose a manual pivot table, and so that we can see everything at once, I'm going to put it on this existing worksheet. So I'm just going to tick that radio button there. I have already positioned my cell marker in A1, and Excel has clearly worked out that I think my data location is in the cells A1 down to A101, and that is correct. The output is going to be put in an existing worksheet, which is here, so that's all fine. All we're being asked now is whereabouts on here do I want it put? So I'm just going to pick one of these cells. I'll pick B1 and we go OK. Do you want to replace? Well, yes, we do. What I get now is I get a dialog box that will help me build my pivot table. So I'm choosing the field name where the data is coming from as data, and there we are, we're told immediately that we've got a sum. Now, we don't really want to actually sum the data, we really want to count it. So I'll just do that again so that you can see what I do. I'm down in this values box down at the bottom right, and I'm selecting that, and I'm going to no longer sum it, I'm going to count it, which means we're going to count the numbers rather than add them up. I'll go OK, and we've got a total here. All right, now we want row labels now. So what we want to do is we want to pick this and drag these down here. So I've dragged the data into the row labels. So what we've got here is we've got the number of times that we've got a 37, the number of times we've got a 38, the number of times we've got a 39. You probably recall that it's a good idea to not do these individual numbers, but to group the data into categories. So I'm going to just right click on this because Excel will do this for you, and we want to choose how we're going to group the data. So I'm right clicking on that cell B3 and I'm choosing group. Now our lowest number here is 37, and it seems that the highest number is in the 60s. So for argument's sake, I'm going to start at 20 and we will finish at 80. And rather than go in ones, I'm going to go in fives. So I'll click OK here. And what we've got is we've got a nicely produced frequency table for our data. So we've got 6 of our sample means were in the range 35 to 39, 14 of them were in the range 40 to 44, and so on. So Excel saved us quite a lot of time. You will already see that this is not a flat distribution. Recall, we're sampling from a flat distribution, but we're now looking at our sample means, and we do not get a flat distribution out of this. It's looking like it might even be normal. The next thing to do is probably to produce a chart of this. So what I'll probably do is I'll produce a scatter graph of it, and I might just produce a frequency polygon like this, and we need to tell it where the data is, so I'll need to start that one again. So I've selected the data, and we will choose a scatter graph and a straight line graph. So here we can see that what we've done is we have actually produced a frequency polygon that shows that we don't have a flat distribution here. I'll just make sure I've still got that selected. I might just see what other presentations look like. So I'll pick a column graph here. That possibly shows it even better. Okay, so what we've got is we've sampled from a flat distribution, a rectangular distribution. We've calculated the sample means of 100 samples, and we're now displaying them as a bar chart. And you can see that the small numbers are less frequent than the middle numbers, and the big numbers are also less frequent. And we're beginning to generate what looks suspiciously like a bell curve, the normal distribution curve. And that really is the whole point of this exercise.